Recently, I was at a party and I met someone I will call Steve. Steve, when he found out what I do for a living, asked me a personal question. He said that a friend of his was doing some estate planning and asked Steve to be the executor of the friend's will. And Steve said, well, I was honored. So I said, sure, yeah, I'll do that. Why wouldn't I do that for a friend? Did I make a mistake, is what he asked me. So I'm Patrick Cawley. I'm with Keystone Elder Law in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and I guide executors through the process of settling estates all the time. So I asked Steve a few questions and allowed him to draw his own conclusions about whether this was a good idea or not. Really, Steve just needed to know what was involved in the process of being someone's executor. The first question I asked Steve was, how much do you know about this friend's family? So will they get along? Will they fight over an inheritance? Because I said to Steve, it doesn't matter how well you do the job as executor, if people don't get along, if people are fighting with each other, they will blame the executor, and the executor will have personal responsibility, especially if they have to go before a court and defend their actions. So you probably want to say no if it's a family that is full of people who are at each other's throats. If they all get along, however, the job might go very well. You might not have any problems whatsoever. The next question I asked Steve is, what do you know about the rest of the will? So there's part of it that names Steve as the executor, but what does it say about the distribution of the estate? Is anyone being cut out of the estate? Is there any surprise in there that Steve would need to know about? Again, this goes back to the first question of, who are the disappointed people going to be? And if it's just a fairly straightforward distribution where it's everything's going to a couple of people who will be very appreciative, there's no special needs involved of a person with a disability, there's no outlying facts, somebody who has a trust for them that will spring up through the will where they won't have access to the money. These are all complicating factors that are sometimes very necessary in a will, but it's going to make life a little more interesting for Steve if he has to navigate around these surprises. So I said to Steve, you might want to just ask for a few details about how elaborate the will be as far as the distribution to people. The final question I asked to Steve is, what do you know about the friend's personal finances? If everything they have is in one bank account, maybe they have one retirement account, well, settling that estate is not going to be all that complicated for Steve. It's going to go fairly easily. In Pennsylvania especially, it might take between a year and maybe 18 months, depending on how long it takes to close accounts, put everything into an estate account, and then do the distributions. There are inheritance taxes along the way, but what I described to him was a fairly simple estate to settle, as opposed to if the friend has multiple bank accounts, multiple retirement accounts, life insurance policies, a stack of savings bonds, if they own stocks all over the place. That's going to be a lot more complicated and will require Steve to gather a lot more documents and be meticulous about figuring out the value of everything as of the date when the friend passes away. So the family and how they get along, the will, how complicated is it? Does it create controversy in any way? The finances themselves that make up the estate. These are things to think through when somebody asks you to be their executor. And it's not unreasonable to ask a few questions. I know it borders on personal privacy a little bit, but they are asking you to take on a role that is pretty crucial to everything they have. So asking questions about what's going on in their life is probably reasonable before you just blindly sign up to be someone's executor. I hope this helps, and if you have questions, we have plenty of information on our website, KeystoneElderLaw.com, and you can always reach out to us with any questions, and we'll see if we can set everything straight so you understand what you're facing before you make decisions.